To revamp, to reform, or to just delete altogether? What do we do with the United States Department of Education? Well, we already know what President elect Donald Trump would like to do. Take a look.
We are the party of common sense. That's what we are. That's what we are. We want to have strong borders, great education, school choice. Does everybody like school choice? We want to move the Department of Education. We're ranked at the bottom of the list, the worst. We spend more money per pupil than any other country by far, and yet we're at the bottom of the list. Out of 40, we're ranked about number 40. And I'm going to close the Department of Education and move education back to the states.
A noble goal indeed, but can it be done? Well, joining me now with her expert take and analysis is the former U.S. Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. It's so nice to have you, and I have to get your take. Do you think it can be done, and should it be done? Should we delete this department altogether?
Well, Tomi, first of all, it's great to be with you and have an opportunity to talk about the Department of Education and the fact, first of all, we need to acknowledge it has utterly failed in its mission. It was stood up in 1979 with the goal of closing the achievement gap between the top performers and the lowest performers. And over $1 trillion at the federal level alone since then. And not only have those gaps not narrowed one little bit, they've actually widened. And so President Trump's call to shut down the department is a repeated refrain that we talked about during his first administration. In order to actually do that, Congress has to go along. It has to be an act of Congress. But there are many things that can be done short of actually shutting it down that would effectively return the power to the states. And that starts with simply block granting the funds that Congress appropriates for education. It's the bureaucracy that has continued to really skew things farther and farther to the left, make an absolute mess of things during this administration. Just look at what happened with the FAFSA rollout and millions of students not able to complete their forms and get their requests for aid in on time. So many denied the opportunity to attend college as a result, totally messing up and confusing and throwing into chaos the rules around Title IX and the need to return to the fact that Title IX was meant for women to be able to equally participate in sports and education activities. And now we have men in women's sports and women's bathrooms and locker rooms. That needs to be cleaned up and taken care of. And then importantly, this federal tax credit that we championed during the first administration, the federal tax credit to support school choice, education freedom in the states, that is a huge priority. And I'm so pleased to see President Trump continuing to call for that. That can be done right out of the bag, and then efforts to shut the department down or really restrict its ability to reach can happen immediately.
I think it's so interesting that you bring up, a lot of the finer points in the context of reforming or eliminating the Department of Education, because to those on social media on the far left, I mean, whether they don't understand the concept or they're purposely misleading people, when they hear Donald Trump wants to eliminate the Department of Education, they then take that and they run wild with it and they say Donald Trump just wants to end education. That's what he wants to do. He wants to make sure that kids can't go to school. That's what they're running with. And of course, that's not realistic. That's not what he endeavors to do. He just wants to return it to the states because the states at the local level, they're able to better serve the kids and the community and the demographics that they're working with. But, any of this is going to be met with fierce opposition from what has become a cartel, the teachers' unions, Randy Weingarten and the rest of them. Do you think that this is going to be a big battle with the teachers' union that the Trump administration could win?
Well, everything with the teachers union is a battle when you talk about taking some of their power and control away and the resources. If you talk about moving them closer to families, closer to the people who are actually supposed to be served by the education funds, the students, anything in that direction, the teachers' unions yell and scream and kick about. But it has been a cartel, and the Federal Department of Education has essentially been an outpost for that cartel ever since 1979, when Jimmy Carter opened it as a payoff to the teachers' unions. It is an agency with its own agenda, right in the middle of Washington, D.C., and the agenda is around adult issues. It's not around what's best for kids, for students, or for their families.
What can also be done in terms of rooting out some of this woke curriculum? I mean, I know that there are states like Florida that do an excellent job of that. We're endeavoring to do that here in my state of Tennessee, trying to get these porn books out of the libraries, trying to get the CRT, the critical race theory, again, restoring Title IX for what it was designed to be, making sure that young women have opportunities in sports. But a lot of this woke agenda, a lot of people would point to the Department of Education and say, not only are they kind of subsidizing it, but they're cheerleading it. And can something be done at the federal level to kind of reform the way the states have taken on this woke agenda? Can the Department of Education itself do something, if it were to remain, to tamp down on that?
Well, the best thing that can be done from the federal level is to turn back, to depower the Federal Department of Education, because no matter what you do in an administration that wants to tackle these things, you will have a subsequent administration that tries to whipsaw the other way. And as we have seen during the Biden administration and many steps taken during the Obama administration, it would continue to be a back and forth as long as that agency has the kind of power and influence and control that it has currently, with bureaucrats that exist and stay there from administration to administration. So the best thing you can do is really depower that through funding back to the states, or ideally directly to families to make the best choices for their children. So if a school is not responsive to their concerns around a particular curriculum, they can make another choice and find a school that is going to better align with their values. Having more of those choices, having more education freedom introduced across the country is going to change that dynamic dramatically when parents are actually empowered rather than being subservient to a system.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of confusion as well as to why the teachers' unions, or Democrats who are beholden to the teachers' unions, why they so fiercely oppose school choice. Because Democrats and the teachers' unions, they claim to exist to help the most vulnerable among us, the underserved, the disenfranchised. So you would think that those communities that are being actively hindered in their educational opportunities because of where their kids are, where they're zoned, you'd think that the Democrats would be all for giving them the ability to go to a better school, to send their kids to a better place. So why would the teachers' unions, why do they want to fight that? What is their dog in the fight here?
Well, the dog in the fight is the power and control and the resources that they have jurisdiction or sway over. And when you think about how money is appropriated by Congress and appropriated to the department to then turn back in different forms to the states, it goes through a whole, multiple processes internally. A lot of resources, billions of dollars, are sucked up by a federal agency, and then it's spit back out with all kinds of strings attached to it, all agenda-driven strings that then hamstring states and local governments doing best on the best thing they can on behalf of their students. So again, it's any threat to the power and control that the school unions and all of their allied organizations have. They're going to continue to fight. We've seen it nonstop for decades now, as they have continued to have more and more control and more influence. Just look at how much the Biden administration, starting with both the president and the first lady, have done to heighten the power that the school unions have had. One of the first meetings ever in the Oval Office in the administration was with the heads of the teachers unions. Same thing when Kamala was, anointed for the candidate. Her first event was with Randy Weingarten. They know that that's where they have the power. The teachers unions, the school unions do, and that's where they're going to continue to try to hold these elected officials hostage to their demands and their control. But the parents, the people are speaking more and more, as we saw in the results of this election, up and down the ballot. State level races where in Texas, for example, where there were individuals who were not going along with Governor Greg Abbott to introduce and support and pass a major school freedom bill there, education freedom bill. Many of those were retired in primaries and even more in the general election. And so this is going to continue because this is what the people are actually demanding. More choices, more opportunity to find the right fit for each child and their education. And so education freedom's on a roll, and that is ultimately going to change how the system reacts and responds. They're going to have to acknowledge competition and make changes that they heretofore have been unwilling to make.
Yeah, it's staggering when you see across the country the number of school districts and areas where the students are not proficient in reading, writing, and math. I mean, it's really staggering. There are a lot of parents out there that are concerned about a whole host of issues when it comes to their child's education, but a growing one that's been completely man-made by the Biden administration is a lot of parents are a little concerned as well with the influx across our southern border. There's a lot of migrant children that are filling up these schools. And, God bless these kids. It's not their fault, right? But a lot of them don't speak English. And in fact, a lot of them don't even speak Spanish. A lot of them speak all kinds of languages from all corners of the globe. And a lot of parents of American citizens, they're a little worried that their school is going to be hijacked, that their kids are going to receive a subpar education because so many resources are going to be afforded to the people that are in this country illegally, the migrant children. Is there anything that the incoming, and what we hope will be confirmed, new Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, is there anything that she can do and the department can do to comfort some of these parents who are really worried that their English-speaking or American-born children are going to be put on a back burner?
Well, this is a valid concern for all Americans, and it's one of the reasons that Donald Trump won re-election resoundingly, because he has promised to address the issue at the border, and that is going to be, job number one, to make sure we're stemming that tide and shutting that down, and also returning to their homes those who should not be here. But as far as what the incoming Secretary of Education can do, she can continue to advocate for the states to have the power and control over the purse of the money appropriated by Congress, and to insist that we continue to prioritize the education of the kids that have been, citizens of our country, and continue to, work with governors and members of Congress to ensure that the resources that we're spending, today we're spending in excess of $750 billion a year on K-12 education alone. Interestingly, and I think most people are not aware, only about 9% of that comes from the federal level. Most of it comes from state and local appropriations and taxes. And so the federal government has had an outsized role in deciding and demanding what education needs to look like at every state and at every local district level. It's another really good argument why the department needs to be depowered. And ideally, if Congress will support it, phased out and done away with, because education and education policy is best left to the most local level. Ideally, and most especially for families to be able to make the decisions closest to their children. And again, we're seeing policies at the state level start to go more and more in this direction. It's time for the federal level to catch up with that and acknowledge that what we've been doing, when we have nearly 70% of fourth graders who cannot read at grade level, And we, again, are spending more and more and more money, but getting worse and worse results. Remember, during COVID, and as a result of COVID, there was over $190 billion in additional resources appropriated for K-12 education. And much of that has gone to absolutely no avail. Kids' academic achievement levels are still in a free fall. And the ones who were hurting the most, who could least afford to lose time in classrooms, lose time on task, they're the ones who have continued to suffer the most. And they're the ones that, all politicians purport to be in favor of helping and ensuring an equal opportunity for their future. Well, Democrats can and should get on board with the notion of education freedom and making those decisions available to the parents at the most local level.
Yeah, well, they can't because they're beholden to the teachers' unions that pay for a lot of their campaign financing. So that's a big part of the problem there. The last thing I do want to talk to you about is something that is gaining obviously more attention and more steam. And it really shouldn't be. We shouldn't be out of place in the United States of America where we're having to talk about the battle of Title IX. It's just making sure that women's sports, something that feminists on the left have fought for decades, the fact that we have to restore the integrity of Title IX, but that's very much the case. I'm wondering, though, if after this last election, which I really believe was a referendum on the insanity of the trans agenda and what it means for the woke mafia out there, I think even Democrats might be coming around to the idea that they can't support these crazy ideas because if they do, they're going to get voted out. And there's one Democrat who is sounding the alarm on this, who is receiving fierce backlash for it. There's Seth Moulton talking about the backlash to him simply saying we need to restore the integrity of women's sports.
The backlash I've received proves my point that we can't even have these discussions as a party. Instead, we have a wing of our party that shames us, that tries to cancel people who even bring up these difficult topics, and frankly, shames voters. This is the same group of people who told us to defund the police, who told us that there wasn't a problem at the southern border, who told us that inflation was transient, whatever that means, and who told us that Biden was just fine. And they're out of touch with voters.
Betsy, do you think we can get some Democrats on board to restore the integrity of Title IX?
Well, I think that's evidence that some of them are awakening to the reality that a far left wing of their party have really been holding many of them hostage as well. And I think the outcome and the results of the election this month have demonstrated that they have got some soul searching to do around what they're going to actually stand for. And as it relates to Title IX, this administration, the Biden administration, has attempted to rewrite a very fair and balanced framework that was reliable and that had withstood the legal tests that many had tried to hold it to, with a rule that now has been enjoined in 27 states and in many other local districts. Again, not acknowledging and respecting the original intent, the actual intent of Title IX, and that was allowing women equal opportunity. And when you have men, biological men, competing against and with women on sports teams, it simply negates the purpose of Title IX, not to even mention all of the ramifications of allowing them into women's personal spaces. So I'm confident that President Trump in his new administration is going to clean up that mess, clarify what Title IX is and how it needs to be observed, and restore women's sports to be sports for women to do.
You'd think that would just be the most obvious, common sense thing. But unfortunately, here we sit having to have a real battle and discussion about it. I do see the light at the end of the tunnel, though. I think that this past election was a firm rejection of the woke insanity. So I'm hopeful that not only the Department of Education can be reformed or eventually deleted, but I'm hopeful that at the state and local level, there's going to be a lot of even those on the left who are going to understand if they ever want to win an election again, they cannot cave to the woke fringe part of their party, and they have to restore some normalcy, especially when it comes to young people and their education and their opportunities. Betsy, you did such a fantastic job. Thank you so much for your insight and your expertise and your analysis on all of this. We always appreciate you coming on the show and giving it to us straight.
Thanks, Tomi.
Thanks
Great
so
to be
much.
with you.
All right, folks, that does it for this very special episode of Tomi Lahren is Fearless, focusing on education. My God, wouldn't it be nice if we could just teach reading, writing, and arithmetic to America's young people? We're sure paying for it. But that does it for this episode. Please make sure that you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Also, check out this show on Fox Nation whenever you like. And we'll see you Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. But until then, from Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.